So do you think people will get the bit with the thumbnails?
I sure hope they will, or this Mpreg joke's gonna be for nothing.
Okay, this is part 2, so go watch part 1 for a lot of establishment stuff. Do I recommend it? I mean, yeah, why wouldn't I?
For a quick refresher, we have 4 main characters: Inconsistent Intelligence Gamer, Sarcastic Gamer, Girl Gamer, and Xbox Robot. There's also a boring Linux guy who's doing something kinda sus, the Counter-Strike guy, and a gamer store and computer store for shitty jokes. 2 of the main characters are getting married, and the other guy is having dating problems, maybe? And the robot is trying his best to have a life of his own. Did I miss anything?
A lot of the stuff that doesn't really matter, honestly. Especially when most of the interesting things to talk about are more in the second half of the 1.0 comic. Again, we're not going to get into anything past the plot because what is there to talk about? Tim Buckley being a biased gamer? So is every other gamer.
There's also book 3 in the animated series.
Not talking about that in this video. It's probably going to be bloated enough as it is. Besides, we should not waste time and actually talk about the rest of the plot now.
At least Lost is in 2008. Shouldn't be too long before we get to that.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. Sharpie has informed me to do the whole engagement thing when they're not in immense pain, so please stick past 2008. There's like a lot more interesting things than just Lost in this. Also, hey, if you like these videos, maybe you could do that little like and subscribe thing. I have a coffee as well.
Coffee? You're starting to push it.
Yeah, let's just get to the comic now.
Tim Buckley.
Don't fuck with us.
After a quick wrap-up of the EverQuest 2 stuff, we get more Winterine Miss. Yay! And, Ethan tries to go into a coma to talk to the god of retro gaming, but he ends up meeting the god of FPS gaming instead. FPS simply tells him to enjoy video games before proceeding to make jabs at Counter-Strike. Then we learn about how amazing Duke Nukem Forever is and how it got 2 sequels in gamer heaven. Randy! There you go. There's also a Winterine Miss story in book 3, but who gives a shit? We sure don't. We get a bit more about the wedding before Lila tells Ethan something very important. She's pregnant. Ethan and Lila decide to have a heart-to-heart about it. Lila thinks Ethan would probably be a good dad, while Ethan, in a moment of clarity, silently agrees with everyone else that he would probably be a horrible father. But in the end, they decide to have the kid. Couple comics later, and there's an arc about Lucas meeting Kate's parents. And okay, now we get what that Straw Man comic was talking about earlier. The last time we talked about video games was on February 6th, and we won't see video games become relevant again until March 26th. Over an entire month of the comic is dedicated to this plotline. In the context of reading it through the archive, or a $15 book combined with the animated series, this isn't really that bad, but you have to remember that this comic updates 3 times a week. Some comics during this period were still about video games and stuff, but they were all relegated to gag comics like replacing the chainsaw and the guns and gears of war with a train, and gay sex. For the people who give a shit about what these gamers are doing and what their thoughts on the new trendy titles are, that's gonna take a while in real life time. Again, we appreciate the attempt at branching out and not just being a cluster of gaming gag comics, but there has to be a balance. Otherwise it just feels like mush.
Yeah, we should probably get back to the said main plot, which is more just a couple gag arcs of Ethan and Lucas playing Warhammer, with Ethan destroying Lucas's minis and also Ethan making an Iron Man suit, which just in case is of metal. So true, Zeke. Anyway, back to more baby stuff, and Ethan gets the baby a mini 360 controller. There's a couple comics about the wedding, and then a gag arc about Ethan making a Wilt Blend parody and launches a brick through a wall end. Okay, the total is 55.60. Hello, Game Haven, where games are... Oh, hey. What? Oh my... Okay, which hospital? Okay, I'm on my way. Congratulations, civilian! You've been promoted to the wonderful world of retail. Now I need to cover my shift. Stand behind the counter and don't touch anything. You're off at 8. Dude. Lila has gotten a miscarriage. This comic. You know this comic. No matter how abstracted this comic is, you've seen it before. It's penetrated the internet zeitgeist that even 16 years after the comic came out, I still see memes about trying to hide loss in various things. Hell, the recent video game Ultra Kill is heading to shape into a recent update for the game. There's a reason why this has been implanted in the minds of everyone who has read it, and those who haven't. It's a moment that, no matter how serious it is taken, it just does not work in the context of a gag-based gaming webcomic. This comic has constantly struggled between trying to be serious and trying to be a silly, haha, don't take it seriously type thing that just completely collapses when it tries to take something as serious as having a miscarriage. And we haven't even gotten to the comic itself. Its intentions are clear. A silent breakdown of Ethan finding out what happened, but it just doesn't work. Everything we've talked about with what's wrong with this comic culminates in these 4 panels. The posing is incredibly stilted, the requirement to be in this 4-panel format, the lack of real backgrounds, Ethan's mouth being basically the same mouth for 3 panels, and honestly the worst of all being that we don't get Lila's thoughts about this for 6 pages. It's everyone else's reactions we get first, but mostly Ethan's, because he's the main character, not Lila. She essentially got fridged for this moment.
The same day this comic went out, Buckley released a blog post about it. The post was deleted but has since been archived. In it, he talks about how he had been planning this for 2 years now. Not just the wedding, but the miscarriage too, and cites his personal experience dealing with this happening to a former girlfriend of his, and I'm gonna be honest, this post has a lot of insight into the person of Tim Buckley. He talks about the previous things mentioned, but also discusses whether or not CAD can be considered a gaming comic or not. Talking about how CAD wouldn't become a parenting thing if the baby was born, and most importantly, how he wants to write this comic as a story about gamers living their lives. The problem comes in with how this comic does an absolutely god-awful job at keeping any kind of consistent tone. The reason why some things can get away with such intense tragic moments is that the work has built itself up to support said tragedy without feeling jarring or outright offensive. That's not to say that it's impossible for something with a different tone to make those moments work, but there's effort required to ease the audience into making the moment feel natural. Meanwhile, CAD feels like it has an identity crisis when it comes to its tone. It'll constantly jump between extremely silly and extremely serious, but there was still a bit of balance. Lost shattered that balance, so even if it was and is taken completely seriously with no jokes, the structuring and format of the comic just does not support it whatsoever. And we think that Tim noticed that. Only 3 strips later, we get this beautiful comic. It's unintentionally really funny because of the baby controller being used as this tragic, dramatic element, but you might notice something else too. You see it? There is a minor layout change on the last panel where it's split into 2. The strip before that has some other compositional changes, even if the faces are still the same static expressions. This, and a couple more strips throughout this arc, point towards a subtle shift in the comic. Tim has noticed his workflow seems to be holding him back, and now he's trying to do something else.
For a while, the comic is just kind of serious, or, well, trying to be. Because of the 4-panel format, you really can't take this stuff seriously, which can be unintentionally really fucking funny sometimes. But yeah, there's not only the reaction from everyone else first before Lila, but also Zeke accidentally being an asshole about the situation. And it takes a while for the joke strips in the comic to really come back, one of which is like a comic that is kind of structured like Lost. Also, Kate may have just dumped Lucas, and like, yes? Also, they go back together anyway since they don't like dating other people. Sure. Moving on to the other story going on, and Barry, Ethan's boss, sells Gamehaven to someone. That someone being Christian, Lila's ex. Ethan challenges Christian for the store, and he agrees. Reason being that it turns out he is using this as a giant plan to get back with Lila through a bunch of deception and also getting this other girl in as a manager, in order to make it look like he's cheating on her. Lucas also kills Zeke by accident. Just before Lila leaves on plane, Ethan meets up with her to tell her what's going on, and they end up having their wedding in secret because, hey, they still got the tickets, might as well. Ethan goes back to Barry with the deed, and he goes, nah, I'm good, you can have it. And, well, yeah, Ethan now owns Gamehaven. And that's the end of 2008, and yep, most of that was talking about loss. But beyond that, it's obvious that this is the start of a transitional state in the comic, as a whole lot of things are changing. Bringing Moss back in, and yeah, it's very much a case of everything wrong with the comic, but hey, maybe this transitional state will improve upon the comic.
In a surprising turn, this year doesn't start with a wintry mist for once. It actually continues with how Ethan handles owning Gamehaven. This entire arc follows him, well, renovating the place and getting a grip on the concept of running a business. Zeke is repaired and repays Lucas with a death threat. Fair enough. We get a few in-between comics of Kate and Lucas playing Schizoid, and Ethan and Lucas watching Watchmen. Once the store opens, everything seems to get back into the rhythm of things. Business is doing well, Rob is back, all that kind of stuff. We actually get a short story where Lucas is trying to improve his life, so he tries to get a raise so he can afford to go to college. His boss, as we know, is a dick. So yeah. Meanwhile, Ethan is, getting really stressed out about managing the place. Cutting out his social life and going insane. Lila pretty much just goes to Lucas and begs him, please just work with Ethan so he doesn't collapse, which eventually happens. In a sense, this feels a bit like Tim got bored of making tired customer service jokes and decided to just work them in with the game store jokes. The comic's art style is at a very transitional state right now. Posing is a lot more varied and there's actual attempts at different compositions for the frames, along with custom art for the characters instead of just using the same stock bodies. Like, the stank is still there, but there's a lot more variation and that is very much appreciated.
The next couple arcs after Lucas joining Gamehaven are more stuff about Ethan and Lila's wedding and Lucas and Kate dating. The main thing about the wedding is that Lila invited Ethan's brother we only heard about now, Rory, and Ethan is trying his hardest to get him not to come because Ethan does not like Rory. After that, Ethan tries to tell Zeke he can't come, and Zeke very much goes, buddy, if you can't let me leave this fucking house, at least build another robot so I can have someone like me to talk to. Which happens over the course of the next comics, because also Zeke knows about the secret wedding that happened because, you know, robot. This new character is Embla, who will be important for a few arcs throughout the next couple years. She's kind of like Zeke when he was first built, except a bit more zealous about it. Lucas and Lila are kind of pissed about this because, yeah, we just need one more fucking robot that hates humanity. Good idea, man. Also, Zeke spills the beans about the secret wedding anyway, and Embla is generally rushing the whole revolution thing. Everyone is mad at Ethan, and oh, this fucking asshole is back, okay. And there goes the failsafe remote. Zeke is very conflicted about this, because he actually doesn't want to kill his friends, and Embla is basically going to continue without him anyway, but what does it really mean to be a robot? Does he have a place to really belong? I feel like I would have a kind of a better answer for this if the comic wasn't stuck doing a 4-panel thing. Yeah, there's been pages that don't really fit in the format, but my god, there's so much dialogue. Now, some of this is because we're reading this in a book compilation, which reworks a lot of the pages to fit in the 4-panel format, but also, counterpoint, it's okay to have one strip take up an entire page if it allows the flow of the comic to breathe, and the book never does that. So everyone starts apologizing to each other, and Zeke decides to leave with Embla, see the world beyond the house. Zeke and Embla leave, and Ethan just goes full alcoholic, and we see a preview of what's to come. There's also another change to the art style again, which is very much in an awkward transitional state because my god, those eyes are freaking weird in this more realistically proportioned body.
But yes, this is the actual beginning of the wedding saga after 2 months of absolutely nothing happening. We actually get to meet Rory, who seems to be a nice, chill guy, but a scar on Ethan's shoulder that we've never seen before says otherwise. Ethan starts to patch himself up for the wedding before his parents show up, and everything seems to be set up for the wedding. Also, November 4th, 2009 is the last time we will ever see Kate, because after this she basically just disappears from the comic, not even getting any last words. I think now is a good time to talk about something rather interesting, possibly due to a certain event. Ethan's character has changed throughout this year beyond just the alcoholism. In particular, his intelligence seems to stabilize as the year goes on, going from a nigh-on man-child at times to more of an eccentric but otherwise mostly normal guy. And this obviously stems from Buckley's desire to actually try and write more serious stories in the comic. The problem is that the format still kneecaps it. The 4-panel structure just compresses everything. Either the dialogue doesn't have room to breathe, or there isn't enough dialogue, so a punchline needs to be added. If this was formatted more like a standard comic book, both the jokes and the story could be paced so much better. But the insistence on sticking to a 4-panel gag format really does hurt it in the long run. We've said it multiple times before, but it's like the comic has an identity crisis where the things being told in the panels are constantly changing based on the experiences of the writer, but the structure and the history of these 4 panels will never go away.
I think for the sake of the story, I'm going to quickly summarize 2009 now, just to not really break the flow of the wedding. It's much better here than now. So, this year has very much been a transitional year for the comic, as if us saying that 5 times was enough to get the point across. Over time, the art gets more and more manually drawn, the story starts being genuinely more serious in tone. Hell, most of this year was taken up by the wedding, which makes that blog post Buckley posted in 2008 interesting. We think Lost caused a shift in the comic, where the line between gag and story is more separated. But there's still a problem. It's stuck. It stuck itself to this gag comic format that's limiting its story potential because Buckley couldn't just seem to break you off the format for a long time. That's why we find this part of the comic interesting, because it feels like the comic's going through an identity crisis between the gag gamer comic stuff and the more dramatic story side, which creates an emotional whiplash when it's going back and forth between jokes and serious moments. It's not properly balanced. And now, with that out of the way, let's move on to the wedding. God, I can't wait to use Scrivener again. So the wedding happens, and what takes place is some of the greatest dialogue in the entire series. No other dialogue compares to this masterpiece of literature. Lila, with this ring, I take you to be my wedded wife, my best friend, and my eternal co-op partner. I love you more than any spoken or programming language can express. I may not have a strategy guide that tells me all the secret codes to a happy marriage, but I promise to always press continue and try again when I do something stupid. I promise to be true to you, in good times and in bad, through new releases and red rings. I promise to love and cherish you with all my days, and never stop trying to be a better man for you.
Ethan, with this ring, I take you to be my wedded husband. You are my best friend, and I cherish every day we spend together. Life dropped an epic husband, the rarest of its loot table, and I was lucky enough to win the need roll. We've had our ups and downs, but we've come through it all together, and there is nobody I would rather share my life with than you. I pledge to be faithful, patient, and supportive. I pledge to put your need before my greed, and to brave life's toughest instances by your side. To love and respect you for the rest of my days. These things I promise you. Again.
Everyone's at the reception, eating the cake, getting food, doing the toast, when Rory comes to Ethan to ask for his help. So the Hawaiian Mafia is after Rory, not for money, but because he had blackmail material from a councilman at his club, which he was also going to use. Ethan is given a key in the deposit box where it's stored, and they're right behind me, aren't they? Ethan runs and gets cornered on the roof. He attempts to stall and gets a surprise stay from Rory. Rory goes on about how he shouldn't use the blackmail, and Ethan reveals that he has called the cops previously. And Ethan is just tired of this stupid shit from his brother we only met a couple weeks ago. Rory and the Mafia guys get arrested, and the next comic after is a comic that complains about StarCraft 2. So this arc was fine and all, but I just have one question. Why did the Mafia need to be involved? Like, from an author perspective, why did this need to be a thing? The arc could have been short and sweet, but when, whoa, we gotta have some random tension and I gotta resolve this Rory thing, so, random bullshit! Hawaiian Mafia, go! Like, this whole thing just feels kind of pointless, other than it feeling like Tim is saying, I don't really feel like writing these characters, so I'm gonna make them do crimes and go away. I wonder where we've seen that before! Seriously, this is why the comic feels like nothing happens. Because for a comic that changes the status quo a lot, it doesn't really feel like anything is really changing except for superficial things. And the cast's getting smaller and smaller. Hell, it doesn't really feel like anything really changed post-wedding. And that might be true in real life, but I don't know. It feels like if you plan this giant event for years, well, first of all, it wouldn't be interrupted by the Mafia, and second of all, it would affect someone with the characters. But nah, literally the next strip of this comic is back to normal. Maybe a gag comic in that 4-day gap. It was a month long, you fucking idiot. But that's it. Whatever, let's just move on to 2010.
Pretty much every comic for a while is just another gag comic, so there isn't much to talk about other than when acknowledging Zeke. The first proper storyline this year focuses on Ethan's attempts to attract customers to his game store. He devises a plan to turn the store into a live MMO, which in practice is a heavily themed rewards program. The only one who actually seems to be using this program is a golf girl named Abby, who's very much breaking it in half like a playthrough of Final Fantasy VIII. Ethan's reaction can be compared to a disgruntled dungeon master, starting out reasonable before progressing to railroading and eventually just banning her from the store altogether. Someone else shows up and asks about the system, and Ethan unbans Abby. He explains that he took the whole situation a lot more personally than he should have, and admits he went too far. Overall, it's actually kind of a pretty decent story. We will give Hit Dunking Your Eyes in Acid Simulator Ctrl-Alt-Delete this one. Later, we finally get the return of Zeke and Embla. Zeke breaks into their home in the middle of the night because not only is Zeke a bit broken, but Embla is dying. Embla is suffering from something very similar to rampancy from Halo and Marathon. There's the whole stored process of becoming too much to handle part, but less of the emotional degradation and/or god complex part. She already had that. The point is, she's literally unable to function anymore, and for some reason it isn't happening to Zeke. Regardless, Ethan admits that he can't fix Embla. Not yet, at least. As a result, Embla gets stored in the attic, and Zeke is back, with what's effectively an eye patch, deciding to stay home and enjoy life for a while. It's a decent little story, and it's nice to see Zeke come back and attempt to find himself again. Anyways,
You hear about video games?
Yeah, that's pretty much it for the year. There's not really a lot to really talk about this year because most of it was just taken up by, well, gags. There was just like a couple month break between the MMO arc and Zeke arc, so maybe it's just leaning into the plot just starting to wind down. Well, I really see what time, but hey, at least this year was still pretty good. Even if the wedding had the Mafia, whatever. Other than that, yeah, pretty decent. Fuck, there's more wintering in this. Thankfully, it could just be summarized as Ethan plays all of Demon Souls New Game Plus in one sitting over the month. Next. More gag comics. More gag comics. Ah, here we go. Zeke decides to start fresh, and Ethan proceeds to upgrade him first by fixing his eye, and then eventually getting him a new shell because he just tossed the old one out. In the meanwhile, Ethan has the idea to make a human disguise for him, which, yeah, the prototype doesn't go well. But yeah, he's got a new design, and like, fine. I don't hate it, but I don't like it either. I'm just kind of neutral on it. At least joints are still visible. Also, his human disguise is fine too. So as a treat, they go to the theater, and Zeke immediately fucks with the theater projector, and they break out of the projector room. The next is so fucking retro! Oh my god, the retro! I fucking love retro 8-bit graphics, holy fucking shit! After the bunch of gag comics, and there's another gag arc about Lila getting an old beta to Old Republic, but Ethan can't play.
and now we finally get an answer about what's been going on in Scott's room, because Ethan is just way too curious about this. After years of jokes, after years of speculation, after all this time, we finally get to see the inside of its room, and it's normal. Scott basically goes, "There, you happy?" And before Ethan leaves, he tips a lamp to reveal everything. It's the fucking penguin! Ted the penguin wants to destroy Windows because the center that experimented on him used Windows, which he states was them funding the operation? Scott has been drinking nanomachines the entire time, so their minds are linked together. Every single Microsoft product now has a kill switch installed, and every single computer running it will be destroyed in 72 hours. Ethan is powerless to stop this by himself, but was able to slip a piece of paper under the door to tell Zeke what to do. Ted wants to kill Ethan for ruining his plan, but Scott hesitates. Ted then assumes direct control of the nanomachines and makes Scott try to stab Ethan. He misses and tries again. Ted absconds, and Zeke, having become the body-selling robot, finds the CAD comics guy and determines that he's worth 5 cents in some states and 10 cents in others. Scott is then arrested because he committed an act of cyber terrorism. While that was completely batshit insane, it feels like the actual purpose of the storyline was just to reduce the size of the cast. I honestly kept forgetting Scott was a character half the time, because Tim Buckley shoved him into a steel room for years after he ran out of Linux jokes. Yes, we know he planned this for years, but does that really change anything? We've mentioned it multiple times, but Buckley really can't write anyone in this comic other than the 4 main leads. And even with that, it's mostly just Ethan and Lucas. The world feels way too small, especially when early on in the comic you had secondary locations of the computer store and Game Haven. Now we just have the same 2 locations over and over, and it just gets a bit depressing. And yeah, that's the end of the year. There's some extra Christmas stuff, but that doesn't really matter. We're done with the year, and nothing fucking happened. We've reached the final year of the plot, and it took us multiple years to cover the same amount of story we used to get in one. This probably leads to higher quality stories, but it also leads to the years just kind of feeling boring in between. Do you want to know why we have been taking even less time talking about the in-between comics? Because there's nothing to talk about in them. Most of the humor we got from them was when we recognized one as being the source of an edit from cad-comic.tumblr.com. This whole thing's become really boring, and we have nothing. 2010 was about 2 pages, and so was 2011. Let's just get this over with.
Ah, the year people thought the world was going to end. God, that was 10 years ago. Whatever, we got more fucking Winter Emus to deal with. This time Ethan wonders if he's really the king of Winter Emus. So they all plan to make this Games Bowl, with Lucas running it and Ethan competing in it, with many other people. So Ethan takes a cupcake and it's knocked out and... Wait, where's the rest of the comic?
What do you mean, where's the rest of the comic?
Like, the Photoshop export didn't have the images, it just skips to the conclusion.
Don't you remember?
Remember what? He wrote a fucking novella. He wrote a fucking novella. Instead of just drawing like normal, Tim Buckley, creator of this fucking thing, wrote a fucking 25,000 word novella where Ethan is just playing this fucking Games Bowl, and there's nothing happens in this shit. It's just Ethan playing video games and occasionally paintballing someone. The only thing this does is make Abby the queen of Winter Emus, and she only gives like one fucking comic about it before it just moves on to never be a thing again, because it's just a year this shit ends! Oh my god, I can't fucking...
Yeah,
what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah,
Why
we
is
don't
this
really
comic
have
like this? I
anything to
swear
say
God, this
here.
fucking
We read the
comic.
whole thing
Oh
and
my God,
genuinely
this
nothing
fucking comic.
happens.
There's, like,
It
nothing
felt like a
happens.
slog
Nothing
to get
happens in this
through.
comic for, like,
At
14
least with
years.
something like
Why is
Homestuck,
this
you're
comic so
expecting to be
fucking
reading a
slow?
lot.
I hate
But this is a
this comic. I hate it, I
4-panel
hate it, I hate it,
webcomic.
I hate it, I hate it,
If this was styled like a
hate,
regular comic, maybe this would have gone better.
hate. Let me
Definitely
tell
better
you
than
what
reading
you've come
this
to hate you since I
nothing
became
word
There are
pile.
387.44 million
Yeah,
miles
it doesn't
to
seem
the
like
surface
they'll
and
be
wait for
stopping
thin
anytime
layers
soon.
that fill my
Guess
solar
I'll take over
complex.
for a bit
If the
then.
word
You know the drill. More gag comics. Ethan and Zeke play War Machine. When we get back to actual story, the internet goes out, and when Ethan attempts to fix it himself by climbing the Transformer, he turns normal. He's just a normal guy now, and also boring according to everyone else. He doesn't even play video games anymore, he just does other normal person stuff now. Somehow, the lack of Ethan antics leads to everyone else going insane to, like, restore the cosmic balance or something? I don't know, I'm trying to rationalize a weird joke storyline in the middling gamer webcomic. I can understand Zeke doing some stupid shit, but Lucas and Lila? They're kind of too established for that. Ethan goes to the doctor and it turns out he just has a concussion that should fix itself in a few days. This is also the last time Kate is ever mentioned in the comic. That was kind of nothing, and it sounds like Paladin's just about done rambling, so they can take it from here.
Ugh. So after some more gag comics, we're... Alright, the final arc, okay. So Ethan wants to make a Kickstarter, remembers that old game idea he had almost 10 years ago, and he accidentally spills his pancakes over his old time-freezing machine, and because the core is made out of butter, it activates again, causing Ethan to be kidnapped by his future self. His future self then explains that the world was destroyed because he found a way to fix Embla. But then Embla basically experienced actual rampancy from Halo Marathon, and Ethan destroyed her. Zeke goes insane because of this and takes over the world, killing a whole lot of people, including Lila, right in front of his face. Yeah, sorry, this panel is really funny with the framing in Ethan's face. But yeah, Ethan agrees not to fix Embla, but then they have to leave because of patrol, and President Ethan gets captured. President Ethan starts crying about not being able to see Lila again, and the person guarding him lets him out. He rushes back to future Ethan and they fight. The time machine eventually starts tearing a hole into reality, and Ethan presses the button to stop it. But it's just a regular button instead, because Tim didn't think to have a keyboard on this, so Ethan could press Ctrl-Alt-Delete. The time machine is gone. Everyone moves on with their lives after a while. Zeke reveals himself to the world. The gamer church is still a thing. Lucas marries and has a kid with not Kate. And Lila moves on with her life. The next strip is about the My Little Pony mobile game.
What's that? You thought we were done? Nope, there's one more little bit of story after all of this, because we gotta have something to sell the final physical book. Ethan has been stuck in the space between time, possibly for an entire lifetime, before an opening suddenly appears. He enters and finds himself back in his home timeline, several decades in the future. A lot has happened in that time. Zeke has become Zeke Prime, having revealed himself and becoming the progenitor of an entire species of robots that coexist with humans. But you know what? That's too interesting. Let's talk about video games. Nintendo ended up winning the console wars, and Lucas became a very influential game designer with a career that rivaled Miyamoto's. This fucking comic, I swear. Lila moved on and had kids. The two of them connect again, and Lila tells Ethan her top 10 favorite video. I'm the other guy, and I'm Stuttering Craig, and this is our top 10 favorite games that Ethan missed.
Number 10. Dinner.
Blaster.
And that's it. That's the end of Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Thank fucking God. There's just so much. The most damning thing is that throughout all of this comic, we did not care for a single one of these characters, with the possible exception of Zeke. Nobody has any real personality beyond normal, insane, or girl. Even after loss, that doesn't change, and things that are supposed to be major events just feel like noise. It's not helped by the comics world is for the most part laser focused on exactly 2 locations. We know nothing about how these people spend their lives beyond them playing video games and occasionally going to work. Even Lila's career as a professional gamer doesn't show up until halfway through the entire comic, and it's never shown much beyond that initial storyline. Zeke is the only really interesting character, and that's entirely because as a robot, Tim can't just fall back on the same basic life or gamer jokes. Even that well ran dry because he wrote the guy out of the comic for an entire year. Watching a robot struggle to find a sense of identity and grow beyond its purpose as a sapient game console is the most interesting thing here, and it's shoved aside because it doesn't fit the omoshiroi gema forkoma format. Loss is a laughingstock of a strip because it's this attempt to create a dramatic, intense emotional scene, and it just does not fucking work in this layout. It tries to do it more afterwards, but of all the things for Mr. Buckley to change, he decided to stick with this panel layout for the rest of the comic, and he didn't really make any attempts to change this until after the initial comic was done. There was never enough balance between drama and comedy for it to be treated as anything more than a joke, and Loss hammered that in hard, even when the comic desperately tries to be something more afterwards. It definitely didn't help that the storyline, the thing that you probably came here for, starts moving at an absolutely glacial pace around 2010, and the gag comics outnumber the main storyline to the point that once the story ended, Ctrl-Alt-Delete proper becomes a simple gag comic. Sure, Tim has other story-focused comics, but why should we care about them? Analog and D-Pad are Ethan and Lucas, but they're clearly not the same ones we've gone through 10 years of middling story with. You would only really read that stuff if you were vaguely interested in Tim's writing, or if you were bribed. But for us, yeah, we're not doing this again. This comic was just bad. Interestingly bad, but still bad.
This video took so long to make, I have a full-time job now. The ending was different, but I didn't like how it sounded, so I'm rewriting it. This thumbnail joke wasn't worth it, and I still have like one more video to go about all the miscellaneous bullshit from the comic. It's definitely going to be a podcast type thing though. I really don't want to put effort into that. After that and a compilation, I'm just done with this comic. I'm going back to making things I like again.
I'm going home now.
Okay, bye!